students, and welcome. Thank you for joining me today. Today we're going to be taking a look at finding the two solutions using our calculator given a non-standard angle. So you'll notice here I have some problems that I'm going to be going through and doing to help people understand what's happening. Now you'll notice right up here we have Radian mode, and that's identifying what mode to be in. So we're going to make sure that we put our calculator into Radian mode. So let me just kind of help this a little bit. I'm going to turn on our calculator. We're going to hit mode. We're going to make sure that we go down and it is on Radian. Now, if it has the black box on degree, like I have right now, what you're going to want to do is just go over so that you're sitting on Radian and hit enter. This will immediately put your calculator in Radian mode. Second, when you see a secant, you have to remember that the secant cannot be done on the calculator. Instead, you will have to change it into its cofunction or its reciprocal function, cosine. So you're going to go cosine equals 1 over 2.4412. This will allow me to use the arc, and I now have the arc cosine of 1 over 2.4412. And I'm going to plug this into my calculator. Now I'm going to get a radian value. And that radian value is either between 0 and pi over 2 or pi over 2 to pi, depending upon whether I get a positive or negative result based upon my ratio. So you'll notice this ratio that's right here is a positive, and as a result, I know I'm about to get an answer in my first quadrant. Since the first quadrant identifies the ratio, or the reference angle, I know that I will have my first answer, and then I will use that answer in order to find my second. Hitting enter, my first answer turns out to be theta 1 is approximately 1.1487. Now, in order to find the second answer, we have to find it in the fourth quadrant, and we know, according to our information, that the fourth quadrant is going to deal with our reference angle being pi over 2 pi minus our theta prime. You'll recall this information that I've shown several times. So instead of using 360, we're going to use 2 pi. And I'm going to go 2 pi minus my answer. That's second negative. I then click enter, and I get my second answer, theta 2. And theta 2 is now going to be 5.1344. Now both of these are in radian values, and I can now go to the next one. Let's go down and take a look at sine. Sine having a negative ratio of negative 0.2467. Now, according to arcs, sine can only have an answer that is in the first quadrant or the opposite of the first quadrant. So since I have a negative ratio, I know my answer is going to be the opposite of the answer that I want. We also know that sine is a negative. And if we look at our chart, sine is negative in the third and fourth quadrant. And in the third quadrant, I'm going to take pi, and I'm going to add my reference angle. And in the fourth quadrant, I'm going to take 2 pi and subtract my reference angle. So here we go. Working with the arc cosine. So theta equals the arc sine, of negative 0.2476. Putting this into my calculator, second function sine of negative 0.2476. I hit enter. Notice I get that negative ratio. That was what I was expecting. Now my first answer is going to be in the fourth quadrant, so I'm going to take 2 pi and subtract. Since it's already in negative, all I have to do is add that answer. And my first answer for this is theta 1 is approximately 6.0329, and I can either truncate or round. I'm now going to have to find my answer in the third quadrant. I'm going to go back, and I'm going to hit enter, and I have a negative. But in the third quadrant, I have to take my reference angle and add pi. So I'm going to take this answer, and I'm going to subtract pi, and then take the absolute value. So theta 2 in the third quadrant is approximately 3.3917. Once again, truncated or rounded. Going to cosine, arc cosine, and I'm looking at 0.8902. Once again, it has to be in the first quadrant. I know that because it's a positive ratio. If it had been a negative ratio, it'd be in the second quadrant. So I'm going to get my reference angle when I put this in. Second function cosine to get the arc of let's try that again, 0.8902. Click and hit enter, and my first answer is approximately 0.4730. Once again, this is approximate. I'm going to put a dot over my equal sign, and I get 0.4730. We're now going to have to find the second answer. This is in the fourth quadrant, which will allow me to do 2 pi minus that answer. I then get my second answer as 5.8101. Going on. We're now looking at the cosecant. The cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. So we're going to have to start off by saying that the sine of theta is the reciprocal. 1 over negative 7.2451. This will allow me to do the arc sine so that theta can be found. And theta will be the arc sine of that ratio's reciprocal. 1 over negative 7.2451. I'm now going to put this into my calculator, exactly as I see it. And I know that I have a negative angle or ratio. It's going to be in the fourth quadrant as the opposite of the reference angle. So here we go. Second function sine of 1 divided by negative 7.2451. Click enter, and there is my first reference angle. It's the opposite of the reference angle. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add 2 pi. My first answer in the fourth quadrant is theta 1 is approximately 6.1447. To find the second one, we have to go to the third quadrant. I'm going to go back to my arc sine of the reciprocal of the ratio. I'm going to put that in. I get that negative. I'm going to subtract pi to put it in the third quadrant. And I'm going to take the absolute value now. I get 3.2800. Once again, that is in radians. Tangent. Tangent follows the same basic principle as the sine does. So we're going to either have the first quadrant if it's positive, or we have the opposite of the reference angle if we're looking at a negative. So here we go. Arc tangent, that second function tangent, of this ratio, negative 17.4336. I'm going to hit enter. I get the negative that I had expected, and I now need to figure it out in both the fourth quadrant and in the second quadrant. Remember, that's when tangent is negative, second and fourth. Now, if I'm in the second quadrant and my answer is sitting down here as the opposite of the reference angle, all I need to do is find the straight angle by adding pi. Once I have that first answer, I'm going to add pi again, and I will find the answer in the second quadrant. Here we go. Theta 1 can be found by simply adding pi. 1.6280. Theta 2 can be found by adding pi again. 4.7696. And I have my two answers for tangent. Notice tangent's very easy. We're just adding pi and pi. Let's take a look. Sine of a positive angle, that's going to be in our first quadrant, and therefore we're going to find it in the first and the second quadrant, and our reference angle that we're going to get will be subtracted from pi in order to find the second quadrant's answer. So second function sine, arc sine of 0.6542, enter. My first answer for this is theta 1, and theta 1 is approximately 0.7131. We're now going to find our second answer by simply taking pi minus that answer. And the second answer, theta 2, is going to be 2.4284 truncated. We now go to the cosine. Cosine of negative 0.4439. We know we're going to get an answer in the second quadrant, and we will then have to find our reference angle and then find our second answer in the third quadrant. Here we go. Second function cosine of negative 0.4439. Now we know we're about to get an answer in the second quadrant, and that is what we get. So our first answer for theta 1 is 2.0307. Now we know that the difference between this angle and our pi has to give us the reference angle. But if we do it this way, we're going to either end up with a negative if I just subtract pi, or I will get a positive if I take pi minus that answer. Either way, we're then going to add pi to it or subtract pi. So if I have a negative theta prime, I'm going to subtract pi and I'm going to take the absolute value. If I get a positive, doing pi minus my answer, I'm going to have a positive reference angle and I will then add pi. And there's no need to drop a negative as no negative will be present. Let's go ahead and do it both ways. Starting with the second pi minus the angle we just got. And there is our reference angle, 1.1105. If I now add pi, I get my next answer, and theta 2 will be approximately 4.2524. Now let's do that again. This time we're going to use the negative. So if I go second enter, second enter, second enter, I'm right back where I was. I hit enter, got my answer in the second quadrant. I subtract pi, and I get the negative. I subtract pi again, and I have the opposite of my answer. Notice how this says negative 4.2524. And the answer that we want is positive 4.2524. So if you simply drop the negative and go to the fourth decimal place, you get your answer. Notice in each case, as I do this, I stop and I think, where are my answers? What is the reference angle going to give me, and how do I find it? All right, let's go ahead and go to the next one. The next one is going to give us a positive tangent. So we're going to do a positive cotangent, excuse me. So we're going to have theta equals the arc tangent of the reciprocal of this ratio. There we go. We're going to put this in. We're going to get an answer in the first quadrant. We know our second answer is in the third quadrant. It is 180 degrees or pi away. So by simply getting this answer, I write down theta 1, I add pi, I get theta 2. Here we go. Arc tangent, 1 divided by 2.3374. Hit enter. Our first answer is theta 1 is approximately 0.4042. I'm now going to add pi, And my next answer in the third quadrant, where tangent is positive, is 3.5458. Once again, I am truncating for each of these. Alrighty, we don't have too many left to do. We have this secant. So we're going to be looking at it as the secant will give me the theta equals the arc cosine of 1 over negative 3.5401. Putting it into my calculator, second function cosine of 1 divided by negative 3.5401. Close and hit enter. There's my first answer. Once again, this was a negative reference angle. It is in the second quadrant. So we have theta 1 is approximately 1.8571. Now, just as we did before, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to subtract pi twice, which means that I can simply subtract 2 pi and then drop the negative. My answer in the third quadrant is going to be 4.4260. That leaves only one left. This is the tangent. It's in the first quadrant. And to find the second answer after we get the first, by just plugging it into the calculator, we're going to add pi. So second function tangent of 0.2034, hit enter. My first answer, theta 1, will be approximately 0.2006. And in order to find the second answer in the third quadrant, I'm going to add pi, and I end up with 3.3422. Once again, all of my answers are truncated. So this was the idea of what I was trying to get you to do. Hopefully this made sense, and for those of you who are trying to do this, you take a look at the work that I've given. Thank you very much, Hornets. I hope this has helped. If you like it, please remember to click like so that I have some idea of the positive or negative nature of my videos. Be well, take care, have a very good and safe time, a good evening, and we'll talk to you later. Cheers.